Congressman Swalwell made Donald Trump a defendant before tonight, a civil defendant. But Dan Goldman, we have now arrived at defendant Trump, criminal defendant Trump. And we are living now in a very perfectly consistent pattern in the history of American law. And that is that every president in history who has ever paid off a porn star has been charged with a crime.
Well, we assume that's part of it. We still have not seen the indictment. It is reported to have 34 counts, which, to my calculation, would be a lot more than just a conduct surrounding the Stormy Daniels payment. And I think one of the things that people ought to be careful of and looking at is that we haven't seen the indictment. We don't know the charges. We don't know the evidence. And yet there are inflammatory accusations about partisanship and political basis for these charges from people who have no idea what the charges are. And that should tell you everything that you need to know about what is motivating Donald Trump and his supporters. On the flip side, this is no cause to celebrate. This is a serious matter where the first time ever a former president is indicted. And we need to make sure that Donald Trump, like every defendant, gets the benefit of his constitutional rights. That is how our system has worked for nearly 250 years. And that is how it needs to continue to work, to make sure that we are following the rule of law, that no one is above the law, and that we are a government of laws and not men, and especially one man. And so Donald Trump should have his day in court. He should challenge the indictment on whatever basis he thinks he should. He should have a right to a trial where 12 jurors will have to unanimously convict him based on proof beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in our legal system. And that's how it has worked for every defendant in our history. It is a tried and true process that is the best in the world. And that's where this case should be litigated.
Congressman Swalwell, Kevin McCarthy is lying already, of course, issuing a tweet threat to Alvin Bragg, which is no threat at all, saying that he and the Republicans in the House of Representatives are going to hold the Manhattan District Attorney to account. Of course, he has absolutely no power to do that. Alvin Bragg doesn't even have to take his phone call and never will, because Kevin McCarthy would not dare to call Alvin Bragg on the telephone and actually have a conversation with him. But this is all part of the fundraising game that Kevin McCarthy is going to play off of this. No one should think that there is the slightest threat from these clowns that you have proven are clowns in their so-called investigative hearings so far. There is absolutely no threat from those people to anything that's happening in this Manhattan prosecution.
Lawrence, there's a real threat to life and public safety, and that's the threat that I'm worried about. Kevin McCarthy could get someone killed with his rhetoric. He's the Speaker of the House. He is second in line to the presidency, and he is taking a wrecking ball to the rule of law, and he is going to inspire and incite somebody to take up violence against law enforcement or somebody involved in this case. Instead of saying that exactly what Mr. Goldman just said, which is our rule of law will withstand this, and if Donald Trump is innocent, a jury of his peers will find him innocent, Kevin McCarthy is already casting judgment on the process. Now, I'm confident that our justice system, our Constitution, the due process under law can withstand this, but it's going to be very challenging, and I'm worried about the targets on the backs of so many in law enforcement when leaders like McCarthy are siding with Donald Trump. It's reckless. It's lies that he's telling, and it's endangering people who walk the beat right now.
Daniel Goldman, with your experience as a prosecutor, what is your sense of a timetable on a prosecution like this, which is, I know, difficult before Tuesday when we find out what the actual list of charges turns out to be?
Well, there will be an opportunity for the former president to review all of the discovery materials, all of the evidence that the prosecutors have. He will then have an opportunity to file any legal motions, including potentially a motion to dismiss the indictment based on his view that the legal theory does not rise to the level of a crime or does not meet the statutory requirements, that will then be resolved by the judge, and then there will be a trial. But these things usually take a good amount of time, and I would not expect a trial much less than a year from now, if that's, even if then.
And Carson Swalwell, in the meantime, there is a very high statistical likelihood that we will have more indictments of Donald Trump in more jurisdictions.
Lawrence, that's right. If you just look at the January 6th committee, a bipartisan committee, the recommendations that they made, conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of Congress, obstruction of justice, those are all being considered right now. And that's why I think it's so important that America's leaders embrace the rule of law, embrace our Constitution and the protections that affords Donald Trump, rather than to really, project violence onto the district attorney and people involved in law enforcement. Now is the time to celebrate justice because it benefits all of us, and not to celebrate any indictment, nor to destroy, public property or make any threats, because more indictments will likely come if this is the track that prosecutors are proceeding under. And it's time for us, again, to just be adults and not be Kevin McCarthy.